get out of here on time. This is, I know we're starting a little bit late, but not a problem. We can get through everything. And I do have another call after yours, so but we will get through everything, answer all your questions, and take it from there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carol Gionnoni, and I will be leading today's session on getting to know STAR Enterprise. Just to let you know, this is going to be a really informal session, so please feel free to interrupt me at any time. I do want to make sure I get all your questions answered. I want to make sure that you can walk away and feel comfortable giving that first assessment to your students. And as always, if there's any questions after the session, feel free to let Bill or Liz know, and they can email that information to me, and we can get those questions answered for you.
Sounds good.
So what we're going to talk about today is who takes a STAR Enterprise test and how often those are taken, some of the characteristics of STAR, additional uses, so it's not just an assessment piece, and then we're going to talk about administering a test with fidelity. And Bill, I know when you, Liz, and I talked, we talked about having everyone do some hands-on. Is that still going to be possible today?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we'll do that. We're going to use my demo site for that information. This way you can do whatever you need to do just to get a feel for what the students are going to feel when they take those assessments, but then it just doesn't skew your data because we're using my site. So what I'm going to do when it gets time to do that, I'm going to pass the presenter rights over to you on your end, and I'm going to send you the URL so that everybody can go ahead and get into it.
Okay.
So about how many people do I have with me today?
10.
Okay, great. That's a good size. Everybody can go ahead and do the assessment, and we can get through that pretty quickly. So then, let's just talk a little bit about what STAR is. So this is a computer adaptive test. Do you know what I mean when I ask, or when I say computer adaptive?
No.
No, explain that.
Okay, what that means is students are going to see the questions on the test. For STAR reading, there are 34 questions that they will see. The first question is going to start off at or just below grade level, so however the students are entered in the system, whatever grade they're at. If they get that question correct, the next question is going to be slightly harder. If they get the question incorrect, it's going to decrease slightly. And it's going to continue to do that throughout all of the questions. And that's going to really help us hone in on the student's ability, so that, as it increases and decreases, it's also going to narrow down that standard error of measure. And that's where we can really identify how the students are doing. Okay? The STAR is aligned to the state standards and Common Core state standards, and it's linked to most state proficiency tests. So we would have that information and be able to run some reports based on benchmarks from that information. And then STAR is based on core progress learning progressions. So when I talk about the learning progressions, what I mean is those are the skills that a student, they start to learn a skill at a lower level, and then they just continue to build on those. So that's what that learning progression is. And that helps them get from point A to point B. I do also want to talk about, and do you have the handout with you?
Yes.
Were you able to get a copy of that to them, Bill?
Yeah, are you referring to the Setting Up Renaissance Place, that one?
Yeah, the web seminar handout.
I believe so.
Okay.
If we copied off the right one.
What it is, so those are some of the things that make STAR reliable and accurate. But one last thing I want to talk about is the score reliability. Like I said, that standard error of measure, continues to get smaller as students answer the questions. But then we also have something called item response theory. And when I talk about that, what I mean is that a student is not going to get a question for every skill that's available out there. But we can still determine the student's ability by making assumptions based on those responses. So example, you know, if your student can divide or multiply, we can assume that they're able to add and subtract. Does that make sense?
Liz. Yes.
Okay, great. So now as far as who takes a STAR test and how often, with your STAR reading students, it is good for grades 1 through 12. Because you have students in 6th through 8th grade, we're going to assume that they have those basic reading skills available to them. Early literacy is not necessarily going to apply to you, obviously. If you had students that were really, really low testing, it would be a possibility, but you don't even have that. So frequency, universal screening occurs 3 to 5 times per year. And that usually occurs in fall, winter, and spring. We suggest doing it as early as possible in the school year once it starts, just because that gives you that baseline for the other screenings throughout the year. Some schools will also put in a late fall screening, and then just give them an additional data point to look at and make some adjustments if they need to, as far as possibly other programs, like if you had an intervention program, which I believe you do, but it will help you get some of that baseline information, assign those resources, and that's where that progress monitoring comes in. You can assess students weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. We have a large data bank of items, so it would be really difficult. Students wouldn't see the same questions. I forget how often, even with the weekly, maybe towards the end of the school year, they might see some repeat questions. But again, it's going to depend on, you know, if their ability has changed, chances are they're not going to see those same questions then. Okay. Any questions on who takes it and how often?
No.
No, thanks.
Okay. And Bill, I know you said you're going to do your assessment once we get through this. Is that correct?
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the characteristics of the STAR. It's a shorter and faster test. As I stated, it's going to be 34 questions. There are not, the test itself is not timed. It takes about, on average, 15 to 20 minutes for the students to get through the test. The questions do have time limits on them, however. So for questions 1 through 10, students would have 45 seconds to answer the questions. For questions 11 through 34, they do get 90 seconds. Okay. Your students can't study for it because of that adaptiveness. It's not going to, you're not going to know what questions it's going to ask you.
Carol, how do we handle it when we have a student that has adaptive IEPs or whatever, that it says that they need extra time on tests?
There is a place to set that, and I can show you that once we move on to the software.
Perfect, thanks.
So they do get extended time. Okay, let me just make a note so I know that when we go out there, I can show you where you can set that. And that would extend it out 3 times the normal amount, just so you know that. Again, it assesses all skills, whether the student sees a question on all of them or not. It's not a graded test. There is a scaled score that comes out of it, and that's on a scale from 0 to 1400. So depending on where the student falls out, it's going to help determine what skills that you want them to work on. And you'll find that immediately when you go into the record book. And again, I'll show you where that is once we go out there. So some of the uses for STAR, right now we're talking about the assessment and universal screening, but based on that scaled score, you can also do some instructional planning, progress monitoring, and I know that's going to be a big one for you since you have the RTI program, but it's also going to help you estimate proficiency on your state tests. It's going to help you look at standards mastery to see where your students fall in line with that, and then you can measure growth. That's a whole nother session that's more helpful after you do your second assessment, because then you can do that comparison between the first and the second. Okay. So when we talk about testing with fidelity, do you have any idea what I mean by that?
Give us your definition.
It's right there on the board for you. So really what it does is it allows your students to do the best that they can to perform the test. And there are some pre-test instructions that will make this really helpful for you. I'm going to show you those when we go out into the software as well. But really what we want is like the ideal environment, or as close to ideal as possible, just so that your students, you know, they're free from distraction and just have that opportunity to perform their best on that test. This is going to help you then, you know, track their achievements, see how well they are growing. And there's 4 parts to that fidelity: planning, preparing, motivating, and monitoring. We're going to talk a little bit about planning right now, and that includes having the test schedule or those screening dates set up at the beginning of the year, because then it allows teachers to know when they're going to have to give those assessments and start preparing their students for that. You know, just to say, hey, this test is going to be coming up, just so you know. Again, just to give you some of that idea. And then allowing enough time for the test to be administered. As I just mentioned, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes on average for the students to take the test, but we suggest that you allow 45 minutes to an hour, especially for that first time that you're doing the assessment, because that's going to give you a chance to get your students prepared, ready to go, make sure everybody's logged in, and just make sure that everything is in place for you and for the students to have that great testing environment. All right, so with that, would you like to take a test as a student so that you can see what they're going to experience?
Sure.
You bet.
All right, so I am going to pass over presenter rights to you. So in the middle of your screen, you should see where it says Share My Desktop.
Yeah. Click on it.
Do we click on it?
Yep. Okay, and then there should be a little, if you put your cursor all the way to the top middle of your screen, there's going to be a little drop down that comes down for you, and then you'll see that chat box.
Got it?
Yep. I'm just going to send you the URL for my site, and then you can just click right on it from the chat box. And then if the chat box is in your way, you can close it. So we are going to have everybody log in as a student to take the test. One of the things I want to let you know is that this information is also on page 2 of the handout. So it talks about logging in to take the test and everything, okay? And we are going to go through walking through how to find student usernames and passwords as well. So with that information, I'm just going to have you log in as students, and it's going to be really easy. If you just want to count off from starting at number 1 and everybody take a different number.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8,
9,
10.
So as soon as everybody has their number, you're going to log in as a student.
We are trying to take we have this on one computer, so Liz is trying to share this with us right now.
Oh, okay.
Do I have everybody's name up there?
No, but I got it, so I'm okay.
Amy.
I'm not up there.
Yeah, you're first.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else? Everybody else there?
I have it. I already have it.
Yep, it's the welcome one. Mm-hmm.
So we're to log in as a student?